Hey everyone, welcome back to the Finance Capital. I'm your host Raj, and this is going to be our final episode of the season. Over the past 9 episodes, we have gone from financial basics to a deep dive in banking, investing, and the behavioral finance. Today, we're bringing it all together and to help you build your 1-year financial vision and roadmap. Joining me is someone who coached and mentored young people in mastering their finance. Mr. Wagner, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great, let's dive in. First off, what should someone's financial vision look like over the next year, especially if they're just getting started?
So is this question relative to people your age?
Yes.
So 14-year-old's financial vision?
Yeah.
So 14-year-old's financial vision. I think it's pretty young. However, I think that that's a great age to where you should learn something about money, and you should be finding and thinking of ways in how you can make money, right? So if you're 14, the options for a traditional job are probably going to be a little bit difficult. However, if you have friends and family, or you're super extroverted at your age, there are definitely ways to go make money, right? You can start your own little small business. You can buy and sell things. There's really, a number of things. You could do jobs for people, whether you're doing babysitting or whether you're doing, something related to labor, right? Like, I don't know. I think when I was younger than you, I did yard work and things like that for people for money.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things you can do. And, a good thing about being your age is you guys probably have very little expenses.
Yes, the clarity makes a huge difference. Most people skip right into tactics without stepping back to define their destination. Once the vision is set, what's a key performance indicators like saving rates or portfolio growth should they track monthly or quarterly?
These are serious questions, I think, for a 14-year-old. So, I would say the first thing to do would be to find a way to make money doing whatever it is that you're interested in, whether it's, doing odd jobs for people. And when you're your age, I think a good thing to do would be saving up for college, right? Because that's probably going to be the time of your life where you start having expenses. So what I would do is start finding jobs and working for money, on the weekends or after school or something like that, and save all your money. When you're 14, you have a big advantage to get a jump start on saving money for when you're older, right? Because your parents probably, how many bills do you have?
Definitely a lot.
You have a lot of bills.
Not for me, but like my parents.
No, your bills.
Oh, I don't have any.
You don't have any bills, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's my point. So when you're your age, since you don't have any bills, what does that mean for the income in which you get? What can you do with that income if you don't have any bills?
You can invest. You can save. You can open like a saving account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so those are all good things, and that's a head start, because when you're and you start working, and when you're independent from your parents, then all of a sudden you're going to start having a lot of blank what? When you're not living with your parents anymore,
you're going to have a lot of money.
No. You're going to have a lot of
time. No, wait, no.
When your parents aren't paying for things for you.
Oh, responsibilities to pay for that money.
And bills.
Oh, bills. Yeah.
And so when you're making money, but then you have bills, it becomes a lot harder to save money, right?
Yes.
Naturally, right? Because all the money that you get, you have to spend on bills. So when you're your age, one thing that your advantage is that you get to save all your money because you don't have any bills, right? So I think when you're your age, a great thing to do would be to get some experience in doing a bunch of different jobs, right? Whether it's landscaping or something related to construction or whatever, any tasks or jobs you can find, do those and save your money. And then whatever you want to do with that money in terms of how you want to save it, if you're investing, that would be a great thing to do. When I was your age, I like to buy Bitcoin. I wish I held on to it because it would have been worth a lot of money now.
Yeah.
But that's an example of something I did when I was your age. And, understanding the stock market and, maybe downloading a Robinhood app and learning, different companies to invest in and things like that.
Totally. What gets measured gets managed. If you're not tracking your progress, it's easy to lose momentum sometimes. And so, Mr. Wagner, what are 3 to 5 financial habits you would say like teens or students can build right now to start seeing results?
3 to 5 financial habits. Definitely one thing to do would be to track your income and expenses. So, like for example, my girlfriend has a journal, and every day when she writes her journal, right, like all the things she did that day in reflections, there's also a little tab she has on her journal that says, how much money you made that day versus how much money did you spend. And so it's a really good habit to, keep track of how much money you made and how much you spent. And when you write it down on paper or you have it in front of you and you're cognizant of it, it goes a long way as opposed to just not tracking your expenses. So tracking your expenses in terms of income versus money that you spent is just one really great way to get ahead. Could you ask the question one more time and see what other things I could think of to respond to that?
Sure. What are 3 to 5 financial habits that teens or students can build right now to start seeing results, even with low incomes?
Perfect. So tracking your income versus expenses and the money you spent. That's obviously one good one. Another one would be not to spend your money on frivolous things.
Needs/wants.
On your wants, right? Especially if you're young and your age and you can get your parents to buy it for you. So, not to spend your money on. One thing I found when I remember when I was young is how fast your money goes away when you spend it on things that you only want for the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're shopping, for example, that's a big one, right? Like on clothes, right?
Yeah.
That's a big one, where kids, I think, spend a lot of their money that and going out with friends, however, there's some utility to spending your money on, pleasure activities, right? But it's all about moderation and not, doing that every day or, I think it's good to spend your money on frivolous things that you don't need. I think when you earn it, right? So if you set a goal for yourself and say, hey, if I make this much or get this much stuff done or, get a really good grade on a test or do something, then in treating yourself like a reward for, frivolous activities, whether it's like buying something in the moment or going out and spending a bunch of money on something, treating it as a reward as opposed to just doing it because you're bored. So I would say not spending money because you're bored is a big one.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's gold. Building those routines early turns money confidence into second nature. And how do they stay consistent with these habits when life gets busy with school, family, or work?
How to stay consistent with these habits,
I think you already answered it with the tracking and everything.
Yeah, I think so. Consistency is key. Consistency is one of the hardest things to do in life, right?
Yeah.
And life gets crazy and things happen. But it's all about discipline and setting aside time every day, whether it's before bed. Like I like to get a lot of my routine things that I get done a lot of it is before bed habits, right? Yeah. So typically I like an hour before bed, right? I'll do a lot of things that I know I need to do to keep a solid routine and habits. So, in terms of if you're doing medications or if you're doing, brushing your teeth and showering or getting ready for the next day or, anything like that. I think setting up a routine and carving out time consistently, 5 days a week, at least throughout the weekdays, is really useful. If you can find time, before bed, or maybe in the morning, you get up an hour earlier before and get certain routine tasks done.
That's such an important point. Motivation fades, but the system and structures make habits stick. So now shifting gears a bit, mock investing challenge, like managing a $1,000 virtual portfolio. Why are these so valuable for beginners?
So the question is, how could it be useful to manage a virtual portfolio? Yeah, so of course that could be beneficial, because if you have a virtual portfolio, say you can test different ways to expand that portfolio, right? So you could say, okay, maybe 25% or 50% of this portfolio I'm going to invest in the stock market. The other 25 and 50% maybe all buy and sell, right? Like, there's different things you can do to measure your economic performance, and you can try a multitude of things, right? And so all of that would expand, your knowledge of what works and what doesn't in terms of fiscal responsibility and growing your finances.
Yes, I totally agree. Do you know any apps or platform that you would recommend for mock trading or portfolio simulation?
For mock trading, I actually don't know any. However, I'm sure a quick Google or AI search would give you plenty of good recommendations. But in terms of real portfolio, you could do an easy app like something like Robinhood.
Yeah. Or
maybe a Coinbase if you like crypto or something like that. Not that I'm the biggest advocate for that, but if it's a small amount of money and you're just doing it for learning purposes, any of those apps would be, I think, useful.
Awesome. When data feels real, people take the game more seriously, and that's when the real growth starts. So let's talk about certifications. What is the entry-level courses or certifications that teens can take to improve their financial skills and resume?
Entry-level certifications. I'm sure there's probably a million different types of certifications. I'm sure you could probably find any industry and get a certification within that industry, right? Maybe if you're interested in private equity, which is investing in private companies or businesses or real estate, you can get a private equity certificate. Or if you're interested in stocks, traditional stocks like S&P 500 type stocks, I'm sure you can get a certificate in S&P 500 stock portfolio management or something like that. So, however, that would be for a very ambitious young finance person.
But so what finance or money books would you put on the must-read list for someone who's building their financial brain?
So finance and money books. One of the most popular finance and money books of all time is a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
That's always a classic. In terms of finance books, there's Warren Buffett books. Yeah. Warren Buffett is one of the most, he's probably the most legendary investor of all time, right? And Warren Buffett is really great because he breaks things down in a very simplistic manner that anybody can understand, and breaks investing down in very easily digestible sort of concepts and logic. And so if you're interested in building wealth and being financially competent, I think Warren Buffett books, and there's a million great finance books. I'm not the biggest finance reader. Finance is sort of more things I deal with at work, and I watch a lot of it. There's also great YouTube videos and podcasts and things like that related to financial literacy. I listen to a podcast. It's a Jewish podcast called Living Lasham, and that's a Jewish finance podcast. and it's literally directed towards all these questions that you're asking me. And I think that's a great resource. Books, Warren Buffett, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think these are great sort of introductory things you can read to be more financially literate.
Books are like a time machine. You can absorb decades of strategies in just a few hours. Let's get real. A lot of teens don't have much money or support. What are some creative ways they can still make financial progress?
What are ways teens could make financial progress without support?
Or much money?
Yeah, so the whole thing, when you're young, you have a great luxury when you're young. And when you're young, the luxury you have is time. And so typically, when you're young, you're doing a lot of jobs where you're trading your time for money, right? Like typically you'll be working, the first introductory jobs that you'll work are probably going to be a job where you're trading your time for money, right? Like you're working for 15 or 20 bucks an hour doing some miscellaneous task, whether you're working at like a retail shop or whether you're doing labor or chores or something like that for somebody else. So when you're young, you can always, and the thing about trading your time for money is that there's basically an unlimited amount of tasks and people who are looking to hire people to trade their money for time. So, and you can do that without support very easily, right?
Yeah.
You can go on Craigslist and find gigs or jobs, or people post gigs on Craigslist where they ask people, hey, will you come help me move? Will you come help me do this? Will you come help me do that? And I'll trade you your time for money. And so I don't think you could go to your neighbors' houses and knock on their doors and ask them, hey, Can I cut your lawn? Can I do this? Can I do that? Do you need to clean out your garage? Do you need me to move stuff? Like, there's a million things that it's always useful to have somebody willing to trade their time for money, do things for you. And so you got to have that ambition. You can't be shy, and you got to learn to communicate with people and talk to anybody.
Yeah. Do you know any good majors or anything that someone can take to really explore this field of finance?
Yeah, so you could be a finance major. I wasn't a finance major. I was a biology major. However, I know a lot of people who were finance majors, and when you're a finance major, there's so many different specialties within finance. But if you're a finance major rather, you sort of get to understand all the different routes there are. You could go into stocks, you could be in wealth management, you could be in private equity, you can be in funds, there's so many different things. And so what was the question one more time?
Do you know any good majors that people can take if they're interested?
Good majors. Good majors for making money, or good majors for understanding finance?
Good major for understanding finance.
Good majors for understanding finance. I would say the best way to understand finance maybe might not even be through the traditional schooling route, but through these sort of activities that we talked about, like tracking your expenses and working for people or working for small businesses would probably be a really great way. If you have a small business owner that you work for, or you ask them to hire you to do miscellaneous tasks or things like that, and you learn about a business, I think that in the real world, right? I think that learning about business in real time, in real life, is probably pound for pound the strongest way to understand finance and entrepreneurialism.
So do you think social media plays a role in all of this finance thing?
Social media plays a role in everything.
Yeah.
It's just the question is what do you use social media for, right?
Yeah.
Because you could use social media to scroll through Instagram and like a bunch of your friends' pictures or whatever, or you can use social media to follow things in which are going to teach you, right?
Yeah.
And so that's probably something else very important that, especially, in how life is today in your generation, you can utilize your iPad, your phone, whatever, to teach you fruitful and meaningful things, as opposed to just sort of digesting garbage and looking at things that are meaningless and don't really help you in any way, right? There's a lot of things that you can look on social media that are just time suckers that just give you no benefit at all, right?
Yeah.
Like eating a bunch of ice cream, right?
Yeah.
You can eat a bunch of ice cream when you're hungry, or you can eat something with meat and vegetables, right?
Yeah. I totally agree with you for this. But do you know exactly some channels on like social media or Instagram that do this?
Yeah, good question. So, one of the things I mentioned a few minutes ago was a podcast called Living Lisham.
Yeah.
So it's Living L''CHAIM. That's a good finance podcast. There's another good podcast that sort of blends finance, politics. There's the All In podcast. I don't know if you know, it's a very popular podcast. And there's a bunch of other people and things you can listen to related to finance. Let me think of some other ones off the top of my head. There's a good show. There's a good one about real estate from Graham Stephan. He's a popular real estate sort of type YouTuber. There's so many. I should have prepped before this with this question. What else? I don't know. You could listen to the President of the United States. He talks a lot about finance.
Yeah.
There's so many resources online in terms of understanding. And I think starting with a field that you're interested in, right? Because there's so many fields within finance. So if you type in, there's real estate podcasts, there's private equity podcasts, there's podcasts about stocks and the S&P 500 and the stock market. And so any sort of one of these sort of umbrellas within finance, you can find great podcasts or great resources online to learn about them very easily.
Totally agree. And I remember how you mentioned about the majors of the finance major and everything. Do you know like any unique jobs that can arise from this major? Because like everybody knows about the investment banking and everything like that. Do you know any unique majors? Unique paths, sorry.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about unique finance routes to go through in school, I would say one route that can kind of give you an unlimited potential, like an unlimited ceiling, or if you want to start out making $150,000, or you want to have the ability to make $10 million. I think private equity is probably one of the most interesting sort of things to specialize in finance, because private equity is everything. Every industry utilizes private equities in every industry and benefits, and every industry benefits from private equity. And so I think PE is a very great route, because from there you can decide, okay, what kind of private equity do I want to specialize in? Do I want to specialize in healthcare? Do I want to specialize in real estate private equity? Do I want to specialize in private credit? Or, there's a million different things within private equity, that million different routes you can go.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just Wall Street anymore.
Nope.
There's fintech, ESG, investing, crypto, and even AI in finance. The space is wide open. And for teens who want to start ahead with what early certifications or skill building programs would they explore before college?
Yeah, so I would say probably the number one thing to do before college, and even during college, which I did, is work in as many different environments as possible. I would say that would be the number one way to teach you, learn jobs related to construction, learn jobs related to landscaping, learn jobs related to small business like retail, or, learn, if you're interested in hospitals, go work at a hospital as like an intern, or do internships. That's a great thing. I did that a lot when I was young, working for different people, just to understand the fields in business and things that they do. There's no substitute for real world experience.
Yeah, great recommendation. Whether it's financial modeling, Bloomberg market concepts, and even Python, those extras can even give you some serious edge. Would you recommend to explore platforms like Coursera, Wall Street Prep, or LinkedIn to learn about these skills?
Could you ask the question again?
Sure. Would you recommend people exploring platforms like Coursera, Wall Street Prep, or LinkedIn to learn about these topics early on?
Of course. Those are all. I actually don't know what Coursera is. I've heard of it, but I don't know exactly what it is. What is it?
It's like a course where it's like an online course. They'll have like videos and like questions they'll teach you about this stuff.
Yeah, of course. I would definitely recommend online learning, but what I would recommend more than online learning is real world experience. So, because real world experience, there's no substitute for being able to look another human in the eyes and have a conversation with them and talk to them about important things, and then being able to learn and listen from people with more experience from you. I think that is probably the number one skill. Learning and things like that online is very, very useful, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't apply it in the real world, right?
Yeah.
And so definitely I would do an emphasis. I would combine both things if you want to become really, really masterful and understanding of what it is that you're interested in, right? Is the combination of real world experience and learning online in your free time.
I love to hear how that is. Focusing on fewer things, educate well in that formula, and also learning about real life experiences, because nothing can replace that, not even online learning.
Correct.
So last question. Was there anything finally you want to say to the audience, any final motivation, or anything they should know before stepping into the real world?
Is your class listening to this, or is your teacher?
Our class and our teacher both.
Your class and your teacher? Yeah, so what I would say is probably the thesis of sort of what we talked about. I think the most important things would be to spend your time in front of a screen wisely, right? When you're in front of a screen and you're on social media or whatever it is that you're on, make sure that I would say the number one benefit of a screen is that you can learn something, right? All these different channels and different programs, like training, educational programs, and all these things, they're all utilized through the screen, right? So I would say, instead of scrolling and looking at, things that don't benefit you, or things that are just sort of time suckers, try to stay away from that as much as possible. I think being responsible with your screen time is very important, and being picky about the things you choose to spend your time on when you're on your cell phone or your iPad or your computer or whatever. And then the other thing would be to would be an emphasis on real world experience, going out meeting entrepreneurs and small business owners, and picking their brains and trying to learn and absorb as much information from these types of people as you can, because there is no substitute for real world experience and being able to talk to people and see things and understand how life works in business.
That's such a great reminder. Everyone starts somewhere, and starting today beats waiting the perfect time. Mr. Wagner, thank you so much for joining us onto this final episode of the Finance Capital. Your insights were incredible. To our audience, this is the end of our season, but the beginning of your financial journey. You have got the mindset and tools, and now the vision. Watch all our episodes again on YouTube, and comment at the Finance Capital 1. And don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe, people.
Let us know what your top goal is for next year, and to build wealth together. This is just Raj signing off for the last episode of the Finance Capital. Stay smart, stay curious, and stay consistent.